I have experience with the dying of the foot, essentially, and the disconnect. The kind of shoes that I was wearing, not just in my dancing world, but out on the streets in New York, were making my foot very small and it wasn't able to move at all. I was introduced to barefoot dancing. Like, we did our ballet classes barefoot. And then I found Gaga movements, and my whole approach to movement shifted. The power and freedom in our moving bodies is what allows us to come alive again. Get to know your foot. Like, look at the bottom of your foot. Stick your fingers between your toes and then move it around. When you look at your feet and touch your feet and think about your feet and feel your feet, there is a robust relationship there. Once I really felt that in my body, there was no way I was gonna put myself back into an inappropriate shoe.
Before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to steal a minute of your time to talk about something that literally changed the way I live: natural footwear. You see, most of us spend our entire lives wearing shoes just to fit in with the crowd. Before I joined TFC, I was no different. I worked as a journalist and I was spending 12 hours a day for almost a decade in these stiff, rigid dress shoes. And then before that, throughout my childhood, I was in stiff-heeled school shoes. I was in cushioned sneakers and those narrow soccer boots as well. But when I slipped on my first pair of Vivo barefoots, I felt something completely different. Freedom. My toes could finally spread, my soles could feel, and my feet could actually move the way they were meant to. It was honestly liberating. Vivo Barefoot has been such a huge part of all of our journeys here at the Foot Collective. They're not just making shoes, they're making tools that respect human health and the planet. And they've been walking alongside us for years, helping people take the first step toward better foot health. So if you're ready to start reconnecting with your foundation, check out Vivo Barefoot. You'll find the link in the show notes, and if you use the code TheFootCollective, you'll get a special discount off their shoes. What do you reckon the most common question is that we get asked by our customers? It's, where do I start on my foot health journey? And to be honest, the answer is different for everybody, and that is why we have created the Foot Health Assessment. So in less than 10 minutes now, you'll be able to answer some simple questions, go through a few foot and balance screens, and then get a score that shows you where you're at right now out of 100. Based on that, we can now give you tailored guidance on the best place to begin. Here's the kicker. Research shows that 1 in 3 adults over 65 will fall in the next 12 months. And balance problems and dizziness are really common now in adults over 40. That means this isn't just about preventing falls in older age or trying to get out of foot pain. It's about training your foundation now so that you can live a longer, happier, and healthier life. So if you're curious, you can take this free foot health assessment now. Just head to the link in the show notes.
Welcome to the TFC Restore to Explore podcast, and today we're welcoming Julia Shemesh. She's a professional mover and teacher and guides women back home to their moving bodies. Hi Julia, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
My first encounter with you was when I think you were doing a collab with TFC about natural foot function, and I'd never seen the way you approached it before. And I was sort of I was fascinated and I was highly impressed. So I'd just like you to explain who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So I've been dancing professionally pretty much my entire life. And I've been teaching yoga for about 15, 16, 17 years or something like this. So these are my worlds that I've really been immersed in. And about 5 years ago, the path of yoga philosophy, this perspective of how to approach our lives really and how we move through them and the actions that we take, converged with the other path that I was on, which was expressive dance on stages, choreography, things of this nature. And they merged together and movement medicine was born. Movement medicine is a sensation-based movement practice that uses imagery and sensation to build courage in the moving body, to reconnect to our physiology, and then to establish creative autonomy. That's the gist of the purpose of why I do what I do. Primarily, I work with women. That's just been what I've been attracted to over the past maybe 3-4 years. I've been exclusively working with women. And my kind of I don't want to use the word fetish because that's a whole different world, but my fascination, my reverence for feet has only grown with my practice of movement medicine. And I'm very grateful to all the variables that had to be in place for me to be able to spend 90+% of my time barefoot. So I live in Thailand right now on an island, and I've been here for about a year. And my daughter, who is going to be 5 years old next week, she has not put shoes on once in the past 7, 8 months. I put shoes on, occasionally, depending on where I'm walking, but it's such a blessing, and it has very, very clearly affected my moving body, my health, my well-being, my perspective, my ability to bounce back to myself when, life throws you off. Truly, this being barefoot and being very connected to the ground.
If you've got a bit of a foot health journey of your own, like journey story of your own,
Yes,
take us
absolutely.
through that. Yeah.
So I started dancing when I was pre-verbal, and by that I mean my parents put me in classes basically where I was quote unquote dancing. So I've always felt very at home on flat surfaces, that are like studios, dance studios, things of this nature. But the kind of dark side of a traditional dance upbringing is that you wear shoes. So you have tap shoes and you have jazz shoes and you have ballet shoes. And I spent about 4 years or so, not just with ballet shoes, but with pointe shoes, where you are really, I'm laughing because it's just so insane and absurd, squishing all of your toes and then standing on top of them and doing some of the most intricate, precise, active, agile movements with the rest of your body on top of it. So I have direct experience with the dying of the foot, essentially, and the disconnect. And what I found is that there was a period of my life where the kind of shoes that I was wearing, not just in my dancing world, but out on the streets in New York, like the boots that I was wearing and the kind of the sneakers that I chose to wear were making my foot very small, and it wasn't able to move at all. Once I got to college, I was introduced to barefoot dancing, and like kind of all the time barefoot dancing. Like we did our ballet classes barefoot or with socks, and it really shifted how I used the rest of my body. And then here's the kicker. I found Gaga movements. It's not a technique, but it's a movement language. And that was in 2000 and I don't know, 7 or 8 or something like this. And again, this movement language, this practice really, really encouraged barefoot or with socks. And my whole approach to movement shifted and changed. So I went from experiencing my body and really my life as disconnected from my roots, essentially. And that right when my roots wanted to connect, there was this like severing. There was this disconnect, this very drastic disconnect, AKA tight shoes or inappropriate shoes. So it took me a while of opening back up again and learning the dexterity of my toes and recognizing the connection between the strength and mobility of my feet and the strength and the mobility of the rest of my body. And once I really felt that in my body, there was no way I was going to put myself back into an inappropriate shoe. And, it's been 10 years now, or wait, no, 2000, almost, oh my gosh, almost 20 years since that, first meeting with, oh, you can actually just do this all day. You can spread your toes all day if you want, and then all those, I don't know the names of the shoe brands, but Vibram and like the body, whatever, all those brands started coming out. And I was like, yeah. And I tried those and they're fine to a certain extent. I think if you're in a city, those are fantastic. But I made choices about my life where I could spend more time barefoot or with socks and or with like sandals, essentially really, really wide sandals so that I could actually use my feet. So that is my, in a nutshell, journey from going from a very enclosed, stuck, tight place to an open, robust, agile, and connected place.
Yeah. Um, you, when I watch you dance or move, what do you call it? Dancing or moving?
Such a great question, Andy. And I've chosen to use the word movement, um, mostly because I think the word dancing has such a connotation attached to it, for better or for worse. And I've noticed in conversations with people, with students, with clients that I have, when I use the word dancing, there's an immediate reaction of like either, oh, I can't, that's not something I do. That's something other people do. Or, oh, like I used to do this and, but I can't anymore, or whatever it is. So movement is just a bigger umbrella and it captures more of what I'm really doing here with my work and my purpose. The blood moves, the breath moves, our thoughts move. Yes, our bodies move through space. We move as an entity through massive transformation. So the word movement encapsulates all the things that I'm interested in exploring in terms of movement, not just dancing. And at the same time, the word dance is so human. And I'm going to take it a step further and say so female. And I can, spend hours and hours talking about what I mean by that. But there's a big rite of passage that women in our society are robbed of that includes dancing. So for me, there's like work that I'm doing right now to really excavate and unearth what our relationship to dancing as women is.
And dance has that performance connotation as well a lot of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. And I think, look,
What you
performance
do
is
is
also
not performance. Yeah. What you do is
what,
not for performance sake.
well, what is performance?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it depends on how we want to define the word performance. Or not how we want to define it, but whatever. Like, so that's also something that I'm working on a lot. Because I spent a huge part of my professional life performing on stages in front of people. And there is such a healing mechanism to performance that I think every human on the planet deserves to experience. And really what I'm talking about is being witnessed in your movement, right? Witnessing somebody else is something that we ought to practice. And being witnessed is something that we ought to practice. And this is a lot of what I'm doing in my work with women these days on my group programs and my private work and my retreats and stuff like that. And so there actually is an undeniable aspect of performance that exists, right? And then like, well, what do we attach to performance? Can performance actually just be neutral? And does it have to hide anything? And instead, can it just be a pure expression of who we are and what we're moving through in that moment? I believe deeply that the most healing practices are ones that are fleeting and cannot be recorded. So performance for me is very like live performance is hugely interesting. And I'm very, very, now the word performance has also become like this thing where it's like, I'm going to just show you one aspect of who I am. And I'm a professional performer, which means I've, practiced this choreography and I'm going to do this choreography. And then when I get off stage, something else happens. That's also possible. But I am interested in performance in its essence and the healing capacity that performance has.
Yeah, I love their openness because you could just say, oh, no, it's just a movement practice, but it's kind of like encompassing it all, which is, it all has its benefits in what you do. But on that, because when I watch you, I'm like, oh, how do you even do that? How does it feel? Are you consciously moving? I once read something about how our movement usually follows our eyes, but you get your eyes to follow your movement. Can you, maybe help me and the people listening understand like what it is, or how it is to move like that? Just a little snapshot. Obviously, this is what you do. So yeah.
Yeah. So I work primarily with three rivers of movement in the body. So I work with the river of the legs, which means that it comes from one foot up through one leg, through the center of the pelvis / womb space, and then back down the other leg to the other foot. That's one river of movement that I work with. And this is the foundation of motivation. And motivation means the ability to move, to get up and fucking move. Excuse me. Whoops. Okay. So that's one river of movement. The other river of movement that I work with is from one hand through the arm, through the shoulder, through the heart space, through the other arm, and into the other hand. This is another river of movement that correlates directly with ambition, our ability to reach out and give and receive and all that. And then the third river of movement that I work with is from basically the center. We can call it the spinal column or whatever. We can call it Sushumna channel if you work with, yogic energy. But it's basically the thing that connects the two river of movements that I just described. In other words, creative autonomy. This works primarily in the spine and connects the brain through the heart, through the womb, through the pelvis. So when you're asking about, am I moving consciously, or the eyes, a lot of people say where you put your eyes, your body will follow. Yeah, but the whole point of this practice is deciding who's going to be the leader. So we can allow our eyeballs to literally physically move backwards and pause and be in the passenger seat as an example. And then instead I could, for example, lead with my tail or my spine or my hands or my feet or my pelvis or my shoulder blades or my armpits or the space behind my knees or underneath my throat or whatever it is, and allow my eyes to just enjoy the weirdo ride. Yeah. Or I could absolutely be my, bipedal human self and lead with my vision. That's also an option. But the point is that we have an option. I think that's really the work that I'm interested in uncovering. Like, how do we give ourselves the choice so that I'm not on autopilot, so that I'm not saying, oh, well, this is just the way it is. This is just how I move, And in terms of like, am I moving consciously? I think in the beginning of the practice, we have to put forth a kind of egotistical effort to move. So it's like, I'm moving my arm here. I'm moving my arm over there. I'm bending my knees. I'm lifting my chin. I'm sticking my ass out. Whatever it is. And it requires attention and curiosity and focus, so there's a lot of, and that's what I mean by egotistical. It's you, the I that is you is moving yourself, right? But what's beautiful about this practice is that when we do it with reverence and with devotion over and over again, we do arrive at a point where there's a switch, there's a shift, there's a transformation that happens. And then suddenly I'm being moved. So like, yes, it looks the same maybe from the outside. My elbow is going up, right? But I'm no longer consciously moving it. I'm observing myself moving. And we could say that this is the difference between saying, I am God. That's my egotistical approach to movement. I am God. I am the controller of my body, and I'm moving myself. And that's good, and it serves a purpose up until a certain, point. And then the shift happens, and it's like, oh, I'm still doing this thing, but actually I can relax. And I can see that God is me. So it's not I am God. God is me. And that's the essence of meditation. A lot of people are talking about meditation these days, and really what they're doing there is just sitting there with their eyes closed, thinking, which is fine, which is a great prerequisite to get to a state of meditation. But a state of meditation is not you sitting there observing your thoughts, right? It's you being moved, being completely absorbed in the quote unquote moment. That's what meditation is, at least from a yogic perspective, right? So, and it's not that the goal of movement medicine is to be in a state of meditation, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen the more you do it.
And your feet, some people think that your feet are just along for the ride as you're moving. Okay. So, there's this cultural school of thought that your feet are sort of tacked on after the rest of the body was designed or evolved. And if we watch you dance, it's so obvious or what you move, it's so obvious that your feet are such an integral part of that movement. Are you leading with your feet? Are you thinking of your feet when you're like, or are you watching your feet? Tell me about how they play a part in your movement.
Andy, first of all, I just want to really appreciate that you witness that you see in my movement that my feet are absolutely an integral part of how I move. Yes, it's so true. And I really want to also acknowledge that a lot of the people that I've worked with, students, clients in the past, have had that experience of, here are these feet that I have to kind of like shuffle around literally. I had this experience one time when I was actually walking across Spain with my best friend at the time, whose name is also Andy. And we were walking 8 hours a day through Spain. And there was a moment where we were like, oh, we need a break. So we opted to take a train. And at the time we had like, one backpack each plus a couple of like random bags that we were carrying. And so we were on the train, a lot of other people were on the train, and there was just like all these bags and stuff. And I had this moment where I was looking at the bags and I was moving the bags. I was like, oh, all this baggage that I'm just shuffling around and carrying with me, do I really need it? And there was a moment where I picked up my own leg and moved it over and was like, ugh, do I really need these? There's just like extra weight. And it was just this. And then immediately I noticed that I had that moment and I was like, Julia, these are your legs. These are you. What a weird experience. What a weird moment to have. But the reason I'm telling this story is because I think a lot of people have this experience that these kind of limbs, these extremities, these appendages that we have are extra, or are like these things that we kind of have to like lug around. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I think that's also why there's an epidemic of confusion around what core strength is, right? We often think like core strength. What is it? Oh, our abdominal wall, the 4 layers of our abdominal wall. Thank you, Joseph Pilates. But also, you had your own ideas and neuroses that you projected onto your students. We all do. And unfortunately, core strength is starting to become core stuck. Like we end up actually creating a lot more injury and damage to our moving body because we're quote unquote working on our core strength. And so I would like to reframe that and like kind of address what core strength is. In my opinion, your feet, your ability to express, communicate, utilize your feet and your hands are a direct reflection of your core strength. Because core strength is actually how much you're able to utilize the power that is in your core and send it out into the world. Otherwise, you're a hoarder. Right? Which is also a choice. Like you could totally choose that. Yeah. And there's probably chapters in our lives where because of fear, we feel like we need to hoard. But the work of developing core strength is to access the power in our center and send it through our limbs, through our hands, through our feet. And then it becomes a two-way street. And then we're in the quote unquote flow, right? So yes, my feet are huge portals to this outer world that I want to be involved with and I want to be connected with. I'm not interested in this whole transcendental, out of body business. I think that serves a purpose possibly at a certain time, but I'm very much interested in being here while I can be and connecting horizontally to what's going on in this world. And that I do through my hands and through my feet. So does that kind of touch on your question?
Well, it kind of explains why we see the point I was getting at is that culture says that feet are kind of tacked on and just an afterthought, and they're not an integral part of movement. And you've explained how you see them as an integral part of movement. So I think that does a great job of that. And that leads really nicely into this idea in my world where foot function is pigeonholed into part A moves this way, which means part B should move this way. And there's this normal foot, and we should all be trying to aim at this normal foot. And that revolves around, like you said, like moving like a robot or moving in this very robotic way and analyzing the way that foot moves like that. But there's been a research paper that kind of looked at all the other research that shows that these theories on foot function are all faulty. They're just like theories, and they don't really have much that backs them up. Anyway, my point is that came to the conclusion that foot function is a complex interaction between our environment, our musculoskeletal systems, and our nervous systems. And so I think that really speaks very, like, you are the epitome. When you're moving, you're the epitome of that. Like, and these people are, high level researchers. They're not thinking of you moving when they're saying that, but that really does capture what foot function should be. It's not this regimented, block A moves means block B moves, and therefore there's this this is how it moves. It's such a complex interaction of our body with its environment. Yeah.
Beautiful. I really love this. I'm going to take it a step further and suggest that the bottoms of your feet are not just a portal or a passageway into activating and connecting your musculoskeletal system and your nervous system. Those are kind of like obvious in some ways. I'm going to take it further and say it connects to your endocrine system directly, your hormonal system, right? Like you said, it's like the reality is, like, I also teach integral anatomy, right? And so, like, the reality is there's no such thing as separation. It would be nice, and we can utilize the kind of the practice of separation as long as it serves returning to the whole, And I think sometimes a lot of what's happening in science, we kind of forget that the purpose is to return to the whole. And so we're kind of stuck on these, like, parts, right? And like this leads to this, and it becomes very mechanical and therefore robotic. But in certain like yoga practices, for example, maybe people listening can relate to this. When you're in a plank pose, let's call it, or like a chaturanga pose or something like this, so often what I see is that because we're kind of obsessed with the 7 openings in our head, i.e. our brain. Everybody's obsessed with neurology and the brain scans and the eyes, the vision, right? All these things. We have this feeling in our body that it's like, oh, our feet are back there. So when somebody instructs us to activate our feet or to do something with our feet, it feels as if they're back there, right? This concept of like, or like if we're standing upright, down there. But our feet are right here. They're not back there. They're not down there. They're absolutely centrally you, right? And it also then comes to the question of like, well, where is your center? So for me, again, it goes back to this idea of core strength. The foot is a direct reflection and a direct connection to core strength. Yeah, and I also love what you're talking about of like this relationship to the environment, right? Like, so many of us live on flat surfaces, right? Like restaurants, homes, streets, studios, it's all mostly flat, let's say. And I think I understand why that is. It makes things efficient and linear and all that. But we miss out. We really, really miss out on reality. Right? Like there's actually no such thing as a flat surface. There's no such thing as a straight line. These are abstractions. And it's cool to have abstractions that potentiate our physical form. That's like basically what imagination is. But it would do us such a good service to our well-being and our health if we were to spend a few minutes a day on not flat surfaces with our bare feet. So sand, dirt, rocks, mountains, going up and down things, as an example. And a lot of people don't have access to that, and I recognize that.
Just to go back a bit, I actually have written here that you've said feet are a window to our overall health. And you kind of touched on it. Is this your integral anatomy that you work with? Yeah?
Yes, I love that. I don't remember saying that exactly, but when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. A window, absolutely, a portal. So yeah, I mean, look, we're designed in such a way that essentially the soft, vulnerable part of our foot is constantly attempting to plug into the ground, is constantly attempting to plug into our home. And we are putting barriers in between that ability to plug. Now, I'm playing a lot recently with this concept of like plugging back into the matrix, because I think there's this like idea out there that we've got to unplug from the matrix. And I understand, I think, what that means, and I respect that. But for women, especially physiologically speaking, a lot of our work is actually plugging back into the actual matrix, which is the original womb, the original mother, the original home, right? Matrix, mother, that's where the word comes from. And so one of the most practical ways that we can plug back in to the matrix to resource ourselves and to feed ourselves and to come back to reality is to take our shoes off and walk on the ground, right? So that what we're doing is we're taking off the barriers. We're able to then plug back in. So we're taking off the shoes, we're taking off the asphalt, we're taking off the flat surfaces, we're taking off the boots or whatever it is, and we're plugging back in. And that gives us so much nonverbal information that floods and fulfills our system in a way that then immediately has us making different choices about our lives.
I think it's more difficult for women because culturally there's certain ideas about feet and the way they should look, what type of shoes they should wear, that type of thing. Are you having to break down those barriers with your clients?
It seems to me that at this point, the majority of the women that come to me have kind of already moved through some of that, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't exist. It's absolutely true, especially in cities. Like I lived in New York City for about 7 years. I lived in Los Angeles for 8 years. So I have experience witnessing and also being a part of cities. And I do think that culturally there is this idea that women in order to be XYZ, powerful, sexy, safe, right? We have to look a certain way, and certain shoes are going to accentuate certain areas of who we are, right? So, yeah, and it's like no surprise we have got the foot binding practices that have happened around the world to literally keep women from moving, from running away, from connecting to their source. So high heels to me are very similar. I think maybe, well, not any longer, but once every year. And as I get older, less and less, I'll put a pair of heels on, and pretty much whenever I get to the event, I pretty quickly take them off anyway. So it's like, what am I even doing, right? And I think, I think there's a lot of practices that have been put in place for women to kind of squeeze into. There's like, we got to squeeze into this kind of dress and this kind of shoe and this kind of face and this kind of hair and this kind of whatever. And as women are recognizing that and then making a different choice, we're starting to get wide, grounded feet, right? We're starting to get bellies again, please. We're starting to have hair again. All these very beautiful, natural parts of our bodies that give us our power and our freedom. You know, we're taking it back. You know, and that doesn't mean that we can't choose. That's the point. Again, it goes back to choosing. And unfortunately, much of the quote unquote choices that women make are actually driven very much by societal pressure and autopilot.
Yeah, I had a client that couldn't go. She was a speaker for women in business, and she was quite short of stature. And she told me she couldn't go and be respected by other women if she was in her lower heeled shoes. And so that was definitely a cultural thing, you know. The other thing it reminds me of is my wife had been in shoes that are flat and wide and grounded for years, and then she decided to go back into her old boots and got from our bedroom to the front door. She just kicked them off and put her other shoes on and went out. It was like maybe 20 meters that she got in those shoes. So what does a healthy foot look like to you? What do you like when you see a foot? Can you tell whether it's healthy? What does it look like? How does it move? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I don't know how it looks like because we all have different bodies, but I would say that like if we can move the toes independently, that's a sign of health. Right? We can lift the big toe and bring it down. We can lift the second toe, bring it down, third toe, fourth toe, fifth toe. A la Uma Thurman, you know that scene in Kill Bill?
Yes.
Kill Bill, she's like, move the big toe. So yes, the toes can move independently. They can also move interdependently so that there is a rhythm and then there's a connection and a wave-like pattern throughout them as well. The 3 arches of the foot are available for movement as well. So we have often when people talk about the arch of the foot, they usually think about the inner arch of the foot. So I see the base of the inner arch of the foot as the big toe mound and the inner heel. Those two places create that arch. But then there's two other arches that are paramount. There's the outer arch of the foot, which basically has the pinky toe mound and the outer heel as its basis. And then we have the metatarsal arch that goes kind of like across, the little bones there, which is the pinky toe mound and the big toe mound. And then part of the actual pinky toe and the big toe as well, I think, are part of the metatarsal arch in terms of its function. And when you put these three arches together, you have what's called in yoga, parabandha, this energetic action that allows you to then move the energy up through the leg into other areas of the body, but primarily up there in the spine, right? So that feeds our creative autonomy. So I would say, what is a healthy foot? Toes moving independently, toes also moving interdependently, and then the three arches of the foot are available to be felt and to be used.
And do you give people advice, or do you have advice for people to be able to do this or to work towards this? Like, what are the practical things they can do to help their feet?
Yeah, well, honestly, the green squishy things that Foot Collective has are fantastic. I can't remember what the name of the product is, but
Wild toes.
Wild Toes. Oh, beautiful. Right, exactly. And it's what a apropos name, Wild Toes. So, those are a great starting point. I wouldn't necessarily say like use those for the rest of your life the same way I wouldn't say like use like an inner arch in your shoe for the rest of your life, right? We want to actually develop the musculature and the nerve endings in our feet to be able to spread our feet on our own. But this is a great starting place because it gives you the sensation, it gives you the experience of the space that you actually have. Right. So I would say real practically, like if you want to start this journey of waking your feet up again, which really wakes up your whole life, I would sit in the morning and just massage your feet. Like no big deal. Put on a song, 3-4 minutes per foot. One foot, you're massaging, you're getting into the places that feel like high intensity and just moving that stuff around a little bit. And then the other foot, right? And also for a lot of people, you'll start to notice then the relationship between the ankles, the knees, and the hips. The 6 lower joints of the body are so connected. That bottom river of movement through the legs. So when you actually have to sit down or sit on your bed or wherever you want to sit and hold one of your feet in 2 hands, a lot of people have struggled with just that. So teaching your body to be able to start to open up the 6 lower joints of the body and how that connects to the foot is amazing. So put on a song, 3 minutes, right foot, another song, left foot, just massage it and just like get to know your foot. Like look at the bottom of your foot. Look at the top of your foot. Stick your fingers between your toes. That's one of the best things that you can do, which is essentially what the Wild Toes is doing, right? And then move it around. Yeah, can you wiggle just your big toe? Probably not in the beginning. No problem. And also, when I do this work with people, sometimes a lot of emotions come up because what people are bumping up against is a lifetime of imprisonment, of self-imprisonment. And I don't say that lightly, right? Once you start to open stuff up that has been closed for a long time, it can bring back a lot of old memories and trauma and things of this nature. But fear not, because we can absolutely handle that in our moving bodies as long as we have access to our moving bodies. So that's what I would say. And then, spend time barefoot at home. Like leave your shoes at the door. Don't even give yourself a chance.
And when you said that, that imprisonment, some people are told from a very young age to never be barefoot, as opposed to your daughter who is barefoot like for the last 8 months.
Yeah.
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 And to be barefoot in nature, which is what you touched on before, I wanted to bring it back to that. It's obviously, there's 3 things that you've said about that. It's better for your health, for your well-being and your creative force. Can we delve into I think it's obvious about the health and well-being just to connect to Mother Earth and grounding and just having the difference in texture and depth of pressure from natural surfaces. But what did you mean by creative force?
Yeah. Beautiful. So, okay. So I guess we would have to define, creative creativity, but I don't think I used creative force. I want to be really particular with my words.
Sorry. Yeah.
No problem. Creative autonomy. Yeah. So, so when we are walking on flat surfaces, even if we're walking barefoot on flat surfaces, the effort that we would have to put in to quote unquote activate or access our creative autonomy is much more than if we are walking up a mountain barefoot. Why? Because on a very primal mechanical level, when you are taking your right foot and moving it up the mountain and placing your foot somewhere, immediately your body non-verbally has to creatively adapt to that moment in a very unique way that has never happened before. So literally every step you take, you are invited to access a very primal version of your creative autonomy. And then you find yourself making more consciously creative choices about how you're going to go up this mountain. And the mountain is a metaphor for life, right? So in my opinion, the way we use our bodies is the way we live in the world. So does that make some sense about creative autonomy?
So much sense.
Yeah.
Because even on hard flat surfaces, I see our body moving in different ways upon them, in a different way with every step that has never been experienced before.
Mm.
And it might just be because you're reaching to get a cup from a different angle than you used to reach to get that cup, and your foot has to move in a different way. So there's a big argument that we have to have lots of stiff, supportive, cushioned shoes because we live on hard, flat surfaces. And I kind of get it. But then I think about how we move on those hard, flat surfaces. And even in our day-to-day life, our movement is so different. If, especially, our feet have this mobility and ability to adapt in a different way every time. If they're stuck because they've been in stiff shoes, then they might not be able to change the way they move with the rest of our body and our environment so readily.
So that's why it takes practice.
Yeah. And so then with every step, when you're talking about walking in nature, your creative being has an opportunity to do something new, to create a new movement with every step. I've never heard it explained like that, but it makes so much sense. And our foot, with all its joints and all its nerve endings, is like the perfect conduit between our environment and our body moving over it. Like it's not like I bring it back to that idea. It's not tacked on. It's perfectly designed to be that conduit between our environment and our moving body above it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes, Andy. And then depending on how steep you want to go, right? There comes a critical point where your hands have to get involved.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have even more creative choices about not just the relationship between the feet and the ground and the rocks and the trees and the roots and all that. But now, and not the relation, and not just that, but the relationship between your feet and how they're interacting. But now you've got your hands too, right? So you access all sorts of rivers of movement in the body that often are quite dormant when we are not accessing these creative places.
And so at the Foot Collective, we have this podcast. It's called Restore to Explore. The idea is to get your feet to the level where they can just explore life, where they're not the limiting factor. Or a shoe is not the limiting factor. You can just be.
Right.
Like you are enough to be able to just go and do whatever you want to do. And our programs actually, and this is sort of fits in with how you're speaking. They look at a trek to base camp, like we help people restore their feet so they can, and that restoration process is a trek to base camp. And we have guides taking people through those things so that their feet can be restored. So that for me, I think I don't want to have to think about my feet when I go and do something. I don't want to think, can I do this because my feet are holding me back?
Yeah.
I want them to enjoy the process as well. I want them to enjoy the activity or the movement. Whereas for so many people, our feet are the limiting factor in what we can do and the way we move,
Yeah, I mean, and like the people that I've worked with in the past, it's like, it's not just the feet, right? This opens up a conversation of like, a lot of people are just carrying their bodies around and it's exhausting, and it's absolutely a perceived limiting factor. And so, the work that I do is baseline is we have to reinstate courage in the moving body, because without courage, you're just going to keep schlepping your body around, right?
Confidence, confidence in the moving body that it can do it. Is that what you
Yeah,
mean by
courage.
Yeah.
Courage is basically moving, even though there's fear. Confidence is a result of practicing courage over and over again. Because confidence basically allows you to step out of your comfort zone a little further than you did yesterday. That's all confidence is. Right. And so how do we develop confidence? By building courage in the moving body. And that requires us to do something that is, for most people, they would say it's unnatural because they've become stuck in schlepping their body around, whether it's their feet or their back or their shoulder or, whatever ache and pain and stuckness is going on.
And do you think it is aches and pains most of the time, or is it ideas of aches and pains? Like what? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think pain is absolutely real. And I think that pain is part of life. And in the beginning of life, pain is taught as something that is inevitable. I have questions about that. I'm not so sure that pain is necessary, but for the most part, to respect people's experiences, it's good to say like pain is part of life. Suffering is when we cling to it. So a lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are schlepping their feet around in a form, which is a form of suffering, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't get better. A telltale sign of suffering is that if you were to just keep doing what you're doing, it doesn't get better, right? And so to remedy that, we have to separate pain and suffering. Pain, with working, like for example, with movement medicine, which is a sensation-based practice, what used to be just like a big bucket of with the label pain on it starts to be different kinds of sensation. Oh, heat. Oh, pulsing. Oh, tingling. Oh, a dull ache or whatever it is. So we start to kind of get curious about the sensations and not just immediately label them pain. And that gives us courage to keep going. And that starts to reconnect our pain to the rest of our body. And for women, the work is to transmute the pain, i.e. the trauma, into our body. There's this like epidemic of kind of catharsis in the world, right? A lot, even somatic psychology is very male centric. And what it does is that it looks at male physiology and then kind of applies it to female physiology. And unfortunately, that's just causing a lot of immune issues, autoimmune disease, right? 80% of the autoimmune issues that happen in women, no surprise. And so the remedy, in my opinion, is to recognize that women have to work with trauma in their moving body very differently than men do, for the most part. Not that there isn't overlap and there aren't things that we can do just as human beings, but a lot of my work is about respecting, in the very sense of the word, like respect, to look again, and just taking another look at what's going on physiologically between a female system and a male system. And so we take that pain, lugging, schlepping, whatever it is, and we work with it and we integrate it as women. So it's not really about releasing trauma. That's more for men. That's good. Catharsis, that's like good for you. But for women, not that we can't have moments of catharsis, but that's not the remedy. The remedy is to integrate it into our bodies. And that's how we become bigger.
And if you, is this through your own practice you've learned this, or is this through study? Like, I'm finding it fascinating that this is it's truly a movement medicine, isn't it?
Yes.
When you talk about that word. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Medicine, in my opinion, should be not just curative, but preventative. And that's why it's also a practice, right? Practice doesn't make perfect. It makes just a better practitioner, right? So my work comes from everything that I've dived into, the Gaga work, the integral anatomy work with Gil Headley. Recently, like for the past 2 years, I've been following this really incredible woman named Veronica Rotman, mostly on Instagram, but she has just fantastic knowledge and experience and wisdom to share about female physiology and the nervous system. Let's see, Kimberly Johnson, Jasmine Alicia Carter, Carly Ray Beaudry, Bessel van der Kolk, obviously, right? Like all these people that either through books or through social media or through in-person retreats or certifications I've learned from and have absolutely influenced the way that I perceive myself and my students and the world.
Pretty awesome. Could you, before we wrap up, I would like to hear your if someone's listening to this and has trouble with their feet, this is our audience is people that are looking to restore their foot function.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do is like rehab type of exercise, but we get play involved in our exercise more than the next exercise rehab group. Play. We have this saying, play. It's not our saying. Play is the way. When we start playing, we start getting our body, like our brain, out of our movement, and can start expressing ourselves in different ways. Probably similar to what you've been talking about today, but um, but a lot of what we do is quite routine, and then we add play in on top of that. What would you say to people listening that they can do for their feet? And you've kind of touched on already, but maybe like just some dot points to that really sort of bring it home as to what they should be doing for their feet.
Yeah. Take your shoes off as much as you can.
Okay.
And
Great.
it also don't be silly. Like, don't be too silly in the sense that if you are living in Manhattan, taking your shoes off and kind of going really far out of your comfort zone may actually cause damage. So we want to really take responsibility also about how we are reviving our feet, that it should be a titrated process. It shouldn't be kind of like, I'm going to overhaul the whole thing and throw away all my shoes and, move to the mountains or whatever. I mean, that possibly could work for some people, but I think take it slow, titrated. And as far as I'm concerned, there are only 2 ingredients that are actually required when we're following our desires to move out of pain, right? And move out of suffering. And those 2 ingredients are curiosity and enthusiasm. There's this idea that we need willpower, and I just don't think it's true. Willpower is built as a result of your curiosity and enthusiasm. And also bringing curiosity and enthusiasm is actually physiologically anyway easier and more sustainable. Yeah, sustainable. Willpower isn't sustainable. It runs out really, really quickly. But curiosity and enthusiasm are really important. So I would apply curiosity and enthusiasm to your feet and then begin building a relationship with them. That's the whole point, right? There's actually no right way. Like, even I'm saying, take your shoes off. Maybe not for you. Like, the point is that you choose for yourself. And that when you look at your feet and touch your feet and think about your feet and feel your feet, there is a robust relationship there. That's the point. So,
fantastic. That's exactly, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming along to have a chat with me. Like, I found it unbelievably, it's opened my mind and just gives me a different perspective to the theory that as a podiatrist I have to sort of practice. Not have to at all, but that we do practice. And as a podiatrist, I definitely go outside of what most podiatrists do. But then when you add these layers of connection to our feet, it just makes even more sense. I really appreciate your passion and enthusiasm for this topic, and your life work. It would seem that's your life work. And so how do we find more? Like, I follow you on Instagram and I find it like entertaining, mesmerizing, fascinating. So how do we find you? How do people listening find you?
Yes. So yeah, Instagram at Jujueda, Jujueda. That's where I share my kind of quirky, random bits of, inquiry around movement medicine. And from time to time, that's where I also share my actual offerings. You can also visit my website, which is called movewithjuju.com. And get on my email list, because that's the best way to actually stay connected. I send out most of my offerings via the email list, and my offerings being retreats. Like, for example, this August 21 to 27, I'm leading a women's retreat in the Alps. So we're going to be going into the mountain, like we talked about the mountain, right? We're going to be going up the mountain. We're going to be going into a river, into a lake, through the forest, and as barefoot as possible, right? Depending on what's needed. So I do retreats, I do trainings. I also teach integral anatomy in yoga teacher training programs. I used to lead teacher training programs, so that's another way that you can find me. And group programs, group online programs. That's also a big thing that I'm focusing on these days. I prefer being with a group of people. That's really where I shine and I kind of come alive rather than kind of private one-on-one work, although I do that as well. So my next group program is called Making Moves. And we go through 3 months. The first month is focused on building courage in the moving body. And the second month is focused on witnessing and being witnessed by other women in our moving bodies. And then the third month is about reestablishing our creative autonomy via our moving bodies. And it starts September 2nd. So I have a few spots left for that if anybody is interested to join.
And in your 5-year plan, is this what you see yourself doing? Are you fully involved? This is your why, this work that you've just explained?
This is so beautiful. Thank you for asking this question. So I have a very specific vision, and who knows what will happen, of guiding 1,000 women in the Italian Alps in movement practice. And I have a very specific mountain and a very specific valley that I'm envisioning. So why? Because the power and freedom in our moving bodies is what allows us to come alive again. And as much as we think, we're born on September 27th, 1985, and we die, whenever, especially for women, we're going through a life-death life cycle over and over again. And many women get stuck in the dead and don't know how to revive themselves. So that's my why. My why is we can come alive again, and we do it through our moving bodies.
Great way to finish up. Thanks so much for being with us, Julia.
Thanks, Andy. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Restore to Explore podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to hear more or watch more, then the best thing you can do is give us a like, a follow, or a subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And of course, leave a review. That support means that we can continue creating more educational content like this for our community. If you would like to learn more about our tools, our training, natural footwear, just explore the shop or some of our free resources, then the best place that you can go to is thefootcollective.com. And like we mentioned throughout this episode, we do have a special discount for our listeners in the show notes. Thanks for listening.